There have been spectacular storms across China, bringing some relief from days of scorching summer heat. For several hours, lightning lit up the Beijing skies and also struck several areas on the ground. Gale force winds also wreaked havoc. Doors at Chunlixu railway station were smashed and some passengers were blown off their feet. In other parts of the city, some onlookers kept their cool as a rooftop object fell at their feet while they filmed the thunderstorm. The heavy rainfall, which lasted about 2 hours, also caused severe travel disruption in Beijing, a number of power outages, and left many streets submerged.
Firefighters battled on Saturday to gain control of a destructive wildfire burning near Santa Barbara, California. The blaze mushroomed in size overnight, pushed by gusty offshore winds into dry brush that has not burned in decades. The Whittier fire, which broke out July 8th and has already destroyed 8 homes. It was more than 50% contained on Friday before winds picked up in the evening. Nearly 3,000 people were forced to flee their homes near Cachuma Lake. The community of Goleta remained under evacuation orders Saturday as well.
Flooding in northern Illinois could worsen Saturday as rivers continue to rise following storms earlier this week. On Friday, Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner issued a disaster proclamation for Lake McHenry and Kane counties. He promised the support of the state government to people whose properties were damaged or ruined. Countless homes were affected by flooding after storms dropped over 7 inches of rain on Tuesday and Wednesday. The full extent of damage is still unknown. No injuries or deaths have been reported.
A sinkhole that swallowed a boat and destroyed 2 homes has stopped growing. Officials said Saturday they would monitor it over the weekend before determining whether cleanup can begin. Kevin Guthrie, Pasco County's Assistant Administrator for Public Safety, said the hole has been stagnant since Friday afternoon. He confirmed that the hole, which is 250 feet wide and 50 feet deep, is the largest in 3 decades in the county. It has a history of sinkholes. Dramatic video showed the home in Land O'Lakes collapsing into the hole Friday morning. It quickly engulfed 1 home and a boat. It then consumed about 80% of another home.
Well, the downpours across China have also cut off power supplies to thousands of residents. Nearly 10,000 people in central Hubei province have been left without power. Heavy rains have triggered flooding and landslides in the Wufeng-Tujia Minority Autonomous County, resulting in 3 power plants being destroyed. Road traffic in the county has also been affected. Nearly 400 people have been evacuated to safety. Torrential rains have also damaged around 280 hectares of crops and more than 300 houses. No casualties have been reported as relief efforts continue. The heavy rainfall hasn't let up in many parts of the country. In Zhaozhuang City, Shandong Province, a vehicle was stranded under an overpass and had to be pulled out by firefighters. 2 elderly people and 2 children were also evacuated by firefighters in a nearby village. In several counties of Gansu Province, farmers' crops and residents' vehicles were pelted by intense hail, leaving significant damage. In Jiangsu Province's city of Yangzhong, road signs and trees were uprooted by strong winds, which led to severe traffic jams. And in Yongji County of Jilin Province, record-breaking rainfall and flooding washed many vehicles into rivers, with heavy equipment and machinery required to clean the streets.
Chinese troops have set sail to establish the country's first permanent overseas military base. Chinese state media reported an unspecified number of troops and ships departed from the southern port city of Zhangjiang on July 11th. The base will be established in the small Horn of Africa country of Djibouti. China will be joining the United States, France, and Japan, who also have permanent bases in the country. The government has said the purpose of the base is to support humanitarian efforts in the region, as well as anti-piracy missions China has been involved in since 2008. China is also actively involved in United Nations peacekeeping missions throughout Africa, including in nearby South Sudan. China says the base will serve as a logistics center, while an editorial in the state-run Global Times stresses the base is not about trying to control the world. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
A trillion-ton hunk of ice broke off Antarctica this week, and it represents more than 12% of the Larsen C ice shelf. Martin O'Leary, a Swansea University glaciologist, said that the iceberg breaking off was a natural event, and as of now, cannot directly be linked to human-made climate change. But others, such as Kevin Trenberth, a distinguished senior scientist at the U.S. National Centers for Atmospheric Research, do not agree. Trenberth says that scientists like O'Leary have a micro point of view and a macro point of view. The overall warming of the oceans around Antarctica caused the ice to thin and then leads to events such as icebergs breaking off.
According to Geek.com, the science is in and unambiguous. Climate change is one of the biggest existential threats facing humanity, and many Americans are making some significant changes to help turn the tide. But not all changes are equally valuable or easy to do. For example, a new paper called Environmental Research Letters says that switching your light bulbs from incandescent to LED may be easy, but it doesn't have as much of an impact as, say, becoming vegan or vegetarian. And switching from plastic bags to reusable shopping bags saves 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide per year. That's nice, but it's less than 1% as effective as a year without eating meat. For humanity to really make an impact on climate change, the authors conclude we need to live a car-free life, make 1 fewer airplane trips per year, and have 1 fewer child than we want to. They admit such choices may not be very popular.
There have been celebrations across Malta over its decision to legalize same-sex marriage. It follows Prime Minister Joseph Muscat's vow to reinforce equality on the once staunchly conservative and Roman Catholic Mediterranean island.
I think it's a historic vote. It shows that our democracy and our society is maturing, has reached an unprecedented level of maturity, and it's a society where we can all say we're equal.
The new law removes words such as husband, wife, mother and father from the Marriage Act and replaces them with the gender-neutral spouse.
I'm here today to celebrate the marriage equality. It's a huge, big leap for Malta. Malta obviously is the first position in LGBTIQ issues.
We are all human beings. I am not gay myself. But it doesn't make a difference. I could have been. It doesn't make a difference. We celebrate equality. We celebrate diversity as well. But we are here to celebrate this day in the history of Malta. It's beautiful. It's full of love.
Malta is the 24th country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions gave a speech this week to a group of Christian lawyers, a group called the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF. It concerns itself mostly with protecting religious liberty, and that's pretty much what the Attorney General talked about when he spoke to them. But that is not at all what the press reported. Here's the headline from ABC News. Quote, Jeff Sessions addresses anti-LGBT hate group. Over at NBC News, there was this. Jeff Sessions tells hate group DOJ will issue religious freedom guidance. You would have thought it was a cross burning, which of course was the entire point of those headlines, to give you the impression that it was. In fact, the Alliance Defending Freedom takes positions that are not so very different from the ones Barack Obama ran on in 2008, or that Bill and Hillary Clinton publicly espoused throughout the 1990s. How did this get branded a hate group? Well, by the Southern Poverty Law Center, of course, a totally discredited but extremely rich left-wing organization that for decades has tried to shut down legitimate debate by labeling ideas it disagrees with as hate speech. Among the organizations it has designated a hate group, the American College of Pediatricians, hardly the Klan. But thanks to the Southern Poverty Law Center, they are now in the same category as the Klan in many news stories. Deeply dishonest and unfair, but there's a bigger point. At stake here is one of the most basic questions of all. Who decides what we get to talk about? What should you be allowed to say in public? What should your kids be allowed to learn in school? Which ideas are legitimate and which ideas are so dangerous we must suppress them? Well, NBC News and the Southern Poverty Law Center think they're in charge of that decision. We disagree.
Obesity is becoming a huge problem all over the world. A recent study shows that more than 2 billion people globally are overweight or obese. One reason for this growing obesity is being called activity inequality, where there is a large difference between the top and bottom walkers within a population. Another reason is perceptions of exercise, where people simply don't prioritize exercise in their lives. But some people face environmental factors that simply don't allow them to exercise in the outdoors. Finally, the value of processed food is another large factor, as some countries see this food as a symbol of wealth and success.
A disease spread through infected drinking water and bad sanitation, cholera is soaring in much of war-torn Yemen. What's called the world's worst outbreak of the disease is affecting more than 320,000 people. Officials say those numbers will rise as reports come in from remote areas. Health workers in Yemen say it's becoming more difficult to treat those who are falling ill.
We used to receive between 100 to 150 cases per day. Then the numbers declined for about a week or so. And then, without any warning, the cases hiked up again. We are facing shortages of medicines, especially IV drips.
Yemen has been at war since 2015 in the takeover of the capital Sana'a by Houthi rebels, said by the U.S. and others to be backed by Iran. They're fighting Yemeni government forces that have considerable military support from a coalition of Arab states led by Saudi Arabia. At a briefing to the Security Council, the UN's humanitarian chief said there was no doubt who was to blame for the cholera epidemic.
This cholera scandal is entirely man-made by the conflicting parties and those beyond Yemen's borders who are leading, supplying, fighting and perpetuating the fear and the fighting.
Mr. O'Brien called for a ceasefire so war-damaged health clinics could be rebuilt and medical workers paid. He said the UN needed $250 million to deal with the situation and so far had just a fraction of that. The conflict has also put millions of Yemenis, many of them women and children, at risk of starvation. With UN-led political efforts to end the war apparently stalled, the humanitarian crisis in Yemen is worsening by the day. Daniel Lack, Al Jazeera at the United Nations.
More than 1,400 migrants were taken to Italy on Friday after several rescue operations in the Mediterranean.
Stay down, stay down!
The arrival of the 1,400 migrants comes as the Italian government draws up a draft code of conduct for NGOs operating in the waters. Charities and NGOs say that would make it more difficult to help those fleeing war and people looking for a better life in Europe. The United Nations said it needed more help dealing with the crisis. 3,000 people were expected to arrive into different Italian ports later in the day.
Israel has unveiled a plan to boost the lives of the nearly 2 million people living in the Gaza Strip. It wants to build an artificial island off the coast of the Palestinian enclave with a cargo terminal and even an airport to connect the impoverished territory to the world. The Islamist militant group Hamas has controlled Gaza for much of the past decade, but Israel says it's perceived as being responsible for Gaza as it's largely the only lifeline to it.
Without endangering Israel's security.
I don't have any illusion about the Hamas. We know who is the Hamas, who is Yahya Sinwar, and the other people there. But I'm trying to separate between the civilian problems and military problems.
The artificial island.
Israel says the €5 billion scheme will boost Gaza's economy and ease humanitarian concerns. Hamas has not commented on the plans, while the Israeli cabinet is described as divided over the project.
Electricity and gas installations, as well as logistics centers, will be built on the island.
Italian firefighters have been battling numerous separate blazes on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius near Naples. Tourists and residents have been evacuated for the second time in a week as a precaution after some observers thought the clouds of smoke were coming from the volcano itself. The flames have devastated pine forests and hectares of woodland in the area. At least 100 active fires across the Campania region are being tackled by around 600 firefighters and civil protection workers. Although arson in some cases hasn't been ruled out, dry weather and strong winds have certainly played their part.
Typhoon Talis, the fourth typhoon of the year, is heading toward China's southernmost island province of Hainan. The National Weather Bureau says it's moving northwest with a speed of 12 kilometers per hour. The Bureau forecasts the typhoon will make landfall between the cities of Sanya and Wenning later today. There's also the possibility the storm skips the island of Hainan and instead heads toward Beibu Bay. Ships in the middle and northern parts of the South China Sea and those off the coast of Hainan have been advised to take immediate precautions. Passenger ships and services across the Changzhou Strait have also been halted.
For 2 weeks, heavy monsoon rain has flooded low-lying areas in northeastern India. Rivers and streams have burst their banks, forcing millions from their homes. In the Barpeta district in western Assam, Abu and his family say they've been abandoned by their government.
We've been flooded for a week. Everything, including some of our animals and our rice paddy fields, washed away.
Our water pump is damaged. Until now, we haven't had any help from the government.
Abu's village is among the nearly 4,000 others flooded. Villagers say they are trying to live in tents, which also shelter their animals.
We're facing so many problems: acute food crisis, no drinking water, no place to take shelter.
More than 75 families in the Kanara village on the banks of the Brahmaputra River don't have drinking or potable water.
We go to floodwaters for collecting drinking water. Government officials are yet to visit us here, and they are not providing any help.
Our food stocks are finished. For 3 days we've been facing an acute food crisis. Our home is gone. It was washed away.
We are here in this camp for 15 days. We are demanding the government provide us relief as soon as possible.
The government says the nearly 300 temporary shelters it set up in the state of Assam are housing more than 100,000 people. Not everyone has been able to or wants to leave their homes and farms.
We're about 1,300 people taking shelter here. We can't enter our house until flood waters recede.
We are in the embankment for the last 10 days. Schools remain closed. When it rains, we take shelter under a small tent. There is no other way.
Flooding is an annual problem during the monsoon season in South Asia. The impact has worsened by crumbling infrastructure, clogged drains, and uncontrolled urban expansion. The government is downplaying the impact.
Condition of these people is fast improving, and we are hoping that during the next few days, the situation will be almost normal.
But those affected by the floods are questioning why the government wasn't better prepared. Paul Chadurjian, Al Jazeera.